Welcome back to the Too Much Hockey podcast presented by Kentwood Ford. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall, and my guest early this morning, on the pre of game four here in Florida. We have Doug MacLean. He's the former president, general manager, and head coach in the National Hockey League. And you can find him with Kipper and Bourne on Fridays on the Sportsnet Very channels. Mac, how's it going?
Don't promote that Kipper show, will you? Because I'm trying to get kicked off it.
Yeah, you might be the only reason why it's still on air, though, too, right? So
I'm not saying that. You can
no,
you can say that, but I'm not.
no, okay, no, they do good work. Those two guys are really fun. I love those
Well,
segments. They,
well, let's not get carried away with that either. But
yeah, we're not off to a great start, anyways. But off. Well, speaking of not to a great start, obviously the Oilers didn't have a great start in Game Three. What do you expect tonight for their start, and how do you expect tonight's game to go, Mac?
well, I've been wrong a lot in the playoffs. Starting with, I thought LA would beat Edmonton in the first round. I
Mhm.
looked pretty good after two games, but then it folded quickly. Look, they've got to win tonight, or their series is done. In my opinion, there's no chance. It was almost like Florida had to win Game Two in Edmonton, or they weren't going to win 4-5 against Edmonton, in my opinion, after Game One. So I think and with Draisaitl and McDavid, I wouldn't underestimate the Oilers going in and winning tonight. I really would, but they've got to play a lot different than they played the other night. And I mean, an undisciplined first period that with a couple of horrendous penalties in the offensive zone, and I just too many men on the ice. It didn't look, missed opportunities on the power, but they just didn't look themselves like they've looked at the best of times in the playoffs. So they've got to have a better game, to say the least, with more disciplined play and play their game, dictate the play a little better.
Yeah. Obviously, an interesting day yesterday, Mac, and you've been involved in the game much longer than I have, and been involved in playoff series, Stanley Cup finals, all that stuff. Have you ever seen it? Obviously, what happened yesterday with Edmonton in terms of Knobloch came out on the first off day and just saying we choose to practice today. We're not going to practice tomorrow. So they let the league know and they let the media know, and then out of nowhere, there's obviously two practice rinks, from my understanding, in Florida. The Panthers were out at their ice, and I guess the second sheet, 16 Oilers appeared on that, and Sportsnet had their cameras there, but all the reporters were upset because the players weren't made available. It sounded like, from what Mark Spector was saying, trust was broken and the relationship could be a bit fractured in terms of not being open and honest. I don't know where you come out on that. I know Ryan Rishaug also said too for the other network, just saying that he's never seen this in a Stanley Cup final either. I was just wondering your thoughts on this.
I don't get the value of it. I don't get the value of them being cute.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What's the value of it that the guys don't have to answer to Spec and Ryan and the media who have been there all year? I mean, I don't understand that. This is. I mean, look, you get to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's an honor to be there. It's a great accomplishment to be there. Treat it like it's an accomplishment, and that you're expected to be there and you mean to be there, and you have to take what goes with that. And whether you like it or not, the media are a big part of that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think it's wrong, I can only imagine what the league thinks.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they're very happy with this.
No.
So but why would you let yourself get into that controversy when you don't need it? You got enough controversy going on with your goaltending, with the number of breakaways you're giving up, with too many men on the ice penalties, and some of the guys, their depth all of a sudden becoming an issue. You know, just be out there. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get why they would bother putting this aggravation on their shoulders. It's worse than standing there and talking to people, in my opinion.
Correct. And Spec put it. I thought he put it perfectly worded. Is that, and you just reiterated those words too. And it costs a lot of money for a lot of these broadcasters, TNT, Sportsnet, TSN, TVA, all these networks, and then the various outlets, the Athletic and to be on, to be there. And they're paying a lot of money to be there to cover this, create stories, create conversations. And, just happened the Sportsnet crew looked over and okay, like there's 16 Oilers, there's 29, and there's 97, and then they're not made available. And then Chris Knobloch does a Zoom interview at 10 o'clock in the morning, and not even tipping the media off that there was going to be a practice. Still went doubled down and said there's no practice, knowing that there was going to be one. So,
well, don't make it look like, look, the NHL has enough of a challenge in the United States. Let's not kid ourselves. TV ratings were down 35% this year.
yeah,
ESPN were down worse than that. TNT were down, I think, 34%. I don't know if my numbers are right, but they're pretty close. Let's not make it look minor league.
no,
Let's not make it look minor league because of media availability. I don't know how many general manager meetings I was in and president meetings, board of governors meetings where I was in, where the number one focus was we've got to be available to the media. That's when we went to being on the bench. That's where we went to between the benches. That's where we went to making it, people available at all times to the media. It's like you got a race car driver being interviewed in his car in a race.
yes,
I mean, and we can't say we're going to practice. Like I don't get why they would let themselves get caught up in something as stupid as this.
Now, do you think we see a fine today, a statement from the league, or how does it work usually? I know sometimes on a travel day you wouldn't speak to the media, but just like we have a Flames media pass, and just to be full transparent, like whenever the Flames are traveling, there's one or two players with the head coach who are made available before they travel. So that's on any day. I was wondering your stance in the position you had throughout your career too.
You know what? I guess you go by the league guidelines is what you go by, and I'm not sure what it is in that situation, but I can't believe the league is very happy about this. No. Because you have an obligation to answer to deal with the media. That's an obligation. So I just don't understand why they'd let themselves. They got enough hassles around their team without starting another one, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now you talked about some lineups there that could be happening with what we'll see, as we record this morning, we'll see what comes out, if anything comes out before we end this interview. But it sounds like Stetcher will be in for Klingberg. We don't know Nugent Hopkins. He has not taken faceoffs in the last game in the second half of game 2. So it's obviously a wrist hand injury. There is a shot where he was trying to take a shot and didn't get anything on it. So it's obviously he's fighting something. And then do you go back to Skinner, who is 6-0 in game 4s in his career in the playoffs, or do you go back to a goaltender who's 6-0 this year in Pickard? First, we'll start there. Where would you go with the goaltending front here for the Oilers, Mac?
That's a really tough one. I can't believe that they're even contemplating going away from Skinner. And I get what Pickard did in the first round, and he deserves full marks for that. And it's different to pull your starter in the first round than it is to pull him in the Stanley Cup final.
Correct.
The guy who helped get you there. Okay, so I can't. But by the same token, Skinner shouldn't be blamed for the last game, but he's got to be better. He's got. You don't win in the Stanley Cup playoffs, first, second, third round, and the Stanley Cup unless your goaltender is close to being the MVP of your team. The goaltender, history has shown that the goaltender has got to be close to being maybe not the MVP, the Conn Smythe, whatever it is. He's got to be close to an MVP. And we didn't see an MVP performance, to say the least. Yeah. But by the same token, you can't give up breakaways. Like, how did Marchand get a breakaway at that particular time? How does that happen when you're telling everybody how much you've improved defensively, and you get a breakaway at that point, and all of a sudden you're in big time trouble because of it? Too many breakaways. So they've got to be better, and I just can't believe that they will make that decision to go away. If they do,
Yeah, and
I don't know. I mean, how long since Pickard's played? A
yeah,
month?
yeah, it's been a while, obviously, and he had the
And
injury,
look,
so he had no
and
ice
I'm
time for a bit there too, right? So
so I don't think that'll happen. I'll be shocked if it happens. But hey, if Pickard goes in and they win, they're geniuses. I just think I just can't imagine it happening. Yeah,
yeah,
that's all.
yeah. There's a fan of ours, a guy that was kind of hinting at the start of our pod at UFC in the industry of building
So
real estate, and a friend of mine, Shafin Kanji, who's in the same industry as you, in terms
yeah,
of, he said Skinner is really challenged to stopping breakaways.
yeah.
Uh, that I wonder if that alone is the thing where they're like, hey, well, we're giving too many up. This guy can't stop him. Is that the switch
Yeah.
that they do, or is there something that they worked on with him the last 2 days to fix that? I guess we'll only.
Listen,
Yeah.
we lost a game in our when I coached in the Stanley Cup Finals. Beezer gave up 7 goals in one game. We lost 7-1 to Colorado. Um, he came back after that and hardly gave up a goal. And in the last game, which we lost 1-0 in triple overtime to Colorado, Beezer, if I'm not mistaken, I think Patrick Waugh made 70 saves and Beezer made 76 saves in the game after giving up 7. There's not a snowball's chance I was going away from Van Beesbrook and going with Mark Fitzpatrick, who I happen to like as a goaltender, but I was not even remotely considering that.
Yeah.
And that's after giving up 7. So I'll be surprised, and I think I would work on my defensive strategy versus breakaways before I would do that.
Correct. Yeah, that's probably the logical and the right way to
You
go.
know, yeah,
Now we've seen Stetcher get in, and when he is in, he's playing with Nurse and he's playing good. Now is
yeah.
that, obviously Klingberg had a rough game, and I don't know. I know he took a lot of flack and a lot of blame on that play by Barkov, but I think it was just the fact that Barkov knew the situation in hand. There was the ref there. It all kind of just culminated in one. I don't think there was a penalty there, but others think
yeah,
there might be. But
yeah.
what did you think of Klingberg's playing? Do you think Stitcher is the right ad to put it back in the lineup, or would you go 11-7? So
Look, it's easy to go 11-7 for me because of the amount of ice time Draisaitl and McDavid play. I mean, do you really need the 12th forward?
yeah,
Probably not. And in all likelihood, he's not a very good player.
yeah,
That's my question. Who's going to be the 12th guy? Is it going to be Arvidsson? Is it going to be Skinner? Who's it going to be?
mm-hmm.
So I think I would consider going 11-7. Sketcherd seems to be a positive vibe around this team. He seems to be a character guy. I may be wrong here, but I suspect he's well respected in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to see him in the lineup. Am I right on that or wrong?
No, you're 100% right. The pulse here is he's been a very good team guy. He's been very
Yep.
positive. He's been
Yep.
in and out of the lineup, and he's just waited an opportunity. And when his time has come, he seized it. And even when he got taken out for Ekholm, which people can understand, that's a better
Yeah.
defenseman
Yeah.
to put him
Yeah.
in.
100%.
So, but even again, he was very complimentary and very grateful for the moment and the opportunity he has. So,
Yep.
um,
We'll see.
yeah,
I look if I'm in a do or die game, if I'm in a do or die game, which they are in tonight, in my opinion,
mm-hmm.
and with how much you're going to throw McDavid and Draisaitl and top guys over the bench, I don't think you need the 12th forward.
Yeah,
It's more work, it's more effort matching, and you got to be careful you don't get caught on line changes. But I guess my philosophy would be anytime somebody comes to the bench, it's either McDavid or Draisaitl going over the board. So the changes should be fairly simple.
correct.
I just think if I'm in that do or die situation, I'm going to be playing my big boys as much. Hopefully, look, Nugent Hopkins is a big loss. This kid has been really, really. I mean, I think back to when he was drafted first overall and the grind he's been through in his career, and for him to become that almost most valuable player, almost if it wasn't for McDavid and Draisaitl,
Yeah,
it's a big loss. So let's hope. And typically, if he's not taking faceoffs, you're right. That means it's an upper body injury.
yeah, yeah.
The thing you mentioned on Barkov, to me, Barkov is the new Kopitar. I mean, and I hate to mention that name because, as I've said in my book, it probably cost me you know, 20 or $30 million, taking Brule ahead of him, but that's okay. Uh,
And we love
Barkov,
Brule. He's our guy. So
I do too, and I
yeah,
do too. Actually, we've chuckled. We've gone back and forth a little bit lately over the book. So,
yeah,
but anyway, I think that I talked to Dale Talon for an hour the other night, and he drafted Barkov fifth overall, and I was saying to Dale, like, Dale, what a horse! What talk about? I know Bennett is unbelievable. I get all that, but don't ever underestimate what Barkov means for this hockey team.
mhm.
He is that. He is that Kopitarich like for me. He's a horse.
Yeah,
He really is in
yeah,
both ends of the ring.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and obviously, yeah, we knew Petro when he was Petrovic was playing there, and just everything you heard
yeah.
through him about Barkov was just, doesn't put anything bad in his body, doesn't drink, just goes about the day, and
He's made Paul Maurice. He's made Paul Maurice and Zito geniuses.
correct, he has, and he's also look at Listerainen and
Oh,
Anton Dell. Look at they
oh,
just follow everything he does, and those guys are going to great players to begin with.
and
They're going to be better as they get
and
going. Yeah,
everybody's talking Marchand, and they should be because of how good he's been and how he looks like a different player. In Boston, he was starting to look a little slow, and all of a sudden, when you put him with those two guys who defensively are spectacular and who also are great forecheckers, it is a match made in heaven for Marchand.
yeah,
No different than Bennett has spit in there so well. And look, Marchand deserves credit. Bennett does, but it's the surroundings that have also helped their game, and they know that.
yeah,
You
yeah.
knew Reinhardt, you knew Bennett, we all know Marchand, who's who's going to be a Hall of Famer. But I'll tell you what, when you get a surrounding group like that that play that hard and play that systematic, they're tough out.
Yeah. What do you think of how the way they play? Like in so McDavid, his last 5 games in the Stanley Cup final in Florida, he's got one even strength point when when Forsling and Barkov are on the ice. So
Yeah.
obviously Maurice has done a good job with that matchup, but obviously Barkov again and Forsling have done a good job. But what are you seeing that maybe he needs to get going? Because Kevin BX has said yesterday with Spit and Chicklets that the only way the Oilers win game 4 is if because we've seen a parade to the penalty box in the first period. So they got to capitalize on one of those power plays and score, but that's not an even strength point. That's going to be a power
Yeah.
play point.
Yeah.
What can you see how he can get going 5-on-5 from your vantage point, Mac?
Well, I think that the situation is the more you play McDavid and Draisaitl, the more Paul Maurice has to play on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
So I would play them. I would play the living snot out of them tonight. I really would. I because if you want to match up against them, which they feel most comfortable with that matchup with Forsling and company and Barkov, I'd make them play the defense more. That's what I would do, and take your chances. So I would play the living daylights out of McDavid and Draisaitl. I really would.
Yeah. Well, all right. We'll see how that
And
goes.
McDavid is a thoroughbred. He can handle and Draisaitl. Like, let's not forget, Draisaitl was banged up last year in the playoffs. They're both allegedly very healthy.
Yes.
They can handle it. They can handle the extra ice time, and we know how obsessed those two guys are with winning. I'm putting my money on them, and I'm going with them as much as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a good game tonight. I expect their best. Like McDavid said, they haven't played their best, and it's coming game 4. So we,
And can Skinner match Bobrovsky?
yep. And that is the
That,
question. That is,
that's the big one, and I hate to put that kind of pressure on him because I've been really proud, and I don't know Skinner from Adam, but I've been really impressed with how this kid has battled back from adversity. I saw it last year in the playoffs when they're down 3-1, how he battled back. I didn't like the winning goal in game 7, but he battled back like crazy, and he's done the same thing this year. So don't underestimate McDavid, Draisaitl, and don't underestimate the character of Skinner.
yeah, 100%. It's the one thing that scared me there was, when Edmonton got their third goal in game 2 in Edmonton, Bobrovsky just locked it down. And obviously
He did.
Perry tied it up. And I just feel like obviously Perry did score with little time left to tie it up, but he's been lights out ever since that.
But yeah, 100%. But you can't get back in the game off a great play by Bouchard and Perry, a great play by both of them. and you can't get back in the game and give up a goal the next shift.
No, you just
Killed them. It was over.
yeah,
That was the end of it.
yeah. And that was a breakaway. That was another breakaway.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
100%.
That was the list. And we thought on the other end, Mac, that it would be Florida giving up the breakaways because how much breakaways they gave up in the Toronto series and other series.
Exactly.
It's not been
Exactly.
that way. It's been the reverse opposite in what we've
Exactly.
so.
And I mean, I've got to believe, I mean, Knobloch to me is a good coach. I've got to believe that between Knobloch and Paul Coffey and that defense group and the forward group, that's being locked down tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't, Florida should not be a breakaway team quite like Marner, Nylander, Matthews.
Yes.
They can't be as good a breakaway team as the Leafs were. And it's got to be locked down.
It has to be. We'll finish up on this one. We see the rumblings, what's going on in New York and Kreider maybe to Anaheim, and obviously Joel Quenneville's back in the NHL. But the fall from grace in terms of what's happened in New York, and I don't know where this thing goes. Obviously, they traded Trouba. Now they're going to trade Kreider from all reports what Frank Seravalli's reporting, and we'll see how that transpires. But where are you at with the Rangers and what's gone on there, and why has it not worked out the way it has? Because all of a sudden, they're the best team in the league a couple of years ago, and I just don't think or believe that Laviolette or even a friend like yours, Turk, was a bad coach. I don't know if it's more what's happening up in the management, but I don't know. You have better pulse.
I watched the team really close a couple of years ago when Gerard was coaching. Okay, and I watched them lose. I watched them go to the conference finals against Tampa and lose in a hard-fought series. I watched them go against Jersey the next year, and Jersey was a pretty good team at that time. But I also watched Zibanejad, Panarin, Kreider, and Fox be absolute no-shows in the playoffs in that series. I mean, no-shows.
Yeah.
And until they fix, that's their core group. And they, as a group of 4 or 5, were absolute no-shows in that series. So if you're going to be a no-show in a series against your arch rival, the New Jersey Devils, in the playoffs, something's wrong. And it's not coaching.
No, it's far from coaching.
Right.
Great coaches. So
to me, if they move Kreider to San Jose or to Anaheim, they should get down and say a prayer.
Yeah, 100%.
Trouba, I was surprised they moved because he's a heart and soul guy.
Correct.
Kreider has had a great career. He's a great supplementary player, but he's not a go-to guy when it really is on the line, in my opinion.
In my dealings or seeings in the NHL too, you really don't see a lot of trade. Like I know mostly everyone's a good community guy to begin with. But man, the stuff that Jacob Trouba was doing for kids in that area and other kids, like I was just very surprised that he's putting kids through college and all that. So I was surprised.
Listen, the human side of the game is still, whether people believe it or not, the human side of the game is really important. And when you throw people under the bus, the way they did with Trouba, the way it happened with Ottinger, I'm sorry, there's still a human side to the game and how you treat people. And it's funny, I think back to all the players I managed and coached, not that I'm different, but there's not one guy I've ever managed or coached that I would be afraid to meet in a bar and have a beer with.
Correct. Yeah.
Because you tried to hope you're honest with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's some of that missing in today's game.
It is. Yeah. It's weird. I don't know. It's kind of what that's how I connected with you. That's how this podcast kind of connected. Yeah. It's the human side. And I don't know. I have bad mental health days, but I get through it because it's people like you. It's the Lane Laws. It's, the Elliot Friedmans and whatnot. And then there's the great players, the Michael Backlunds, the Travis Hammoniks, and hey, I'll even say it, like Milan Lucic, I know we haven't really talked about him a lot, but things are changing in the positive light for his life.
Yeah.
He's doing what he needs to do to be more present for the people in his life. So
that's
what's going to happen with him going forward, but
Everybody deserves a second chance.
Yeah, and but yeah. All right, Mac. Well, let's enjoy a good game tonight. We haven't
Yeah,
celebrated
let's
yet.
hope. Let's hope let's hope we get a chance to do a podcast celebrating. Oh no, I forgot you're a Calgary fan. Sorry. We won't be celebrating. This will be it for me and you for the year. Take care, man.
You too, Mac. Have a good one.
See you, bud.